Hi everyone, I'm Rachel. I'm the founder of Rebound Athletic, an online movement coaching service providing safe protocols to those recovering from chronic illness. And today I am joined by Margaret from our Rebounder community, who over the past 7 months or so has progressed through our programs to regain her strength as she heals from long COVID. And I recently asked her if she would allow me to interview her for her story. Unfortunately, she said yes because she is such an inspiration. Having turned 70 this year, she's proven that it's never too late to get your health back and to recover and regain strength. So, if you're someone with long COVID or another multi system energy limiting condition, and at times, understandably, perhaps lose hope, then this video is for you. So, without further ado, welcome, Margaret. Thank you for agreeing to share your story. Perhaps, if you don't mind, starting by telling us a bit about yourself and where this health journey all began for you.
Oh, that's great. Thanks so much, Rachel, for inviting me. No, it's an absolute joy to do this because I've been feeding on recovery stories from other people for so long that it's lovely to offer something back. It really is. So I'm Margaret, as Rachel said. I had my 70th birthday not long ago, which is pertinent to the story, I guess, for many of us. I'm based in Oxford. I'm a retired priest. I was also a former doctor, which feeds into the story in some ways as well, and to my approach to being ill and recovering and so on. So that's me in a nutshell. I was first ill with COVID in March 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic. In fact, I fell ill 2 days before lockdown, which was highly inconvenient because the world was just crazy at that point. And I was very ill. So some people with long COVID, I know, have a very mild infection and then it goes on later to become something more troublesome. I was pretty jolly ill. I've never been so ill in my life as that first attack. So I clearly had an overwhelming infection and the damage that did. And the NHS was in crisis mode. So my memories of that initial stage were just frequent 999 calls, paramedics coming to the house, but not ever quite bad enough to be admitted, but really on the edge in terms of the severity of the acute attack. So obviously it left damage. But I began to recover, about 2 weeks on, was feeling like you would after any other big infection, a flu or something, that things were getting better again. But that was a false dawn completely. And as soon as I tried to do anything, I just sank like a stone. For me, within those first weeks, massive fatigue, and then growing gastrointestinal problems. That was a big thing, which were I was unable really to tolerate any diet at all. A lot of severe pain, and then I was hospitalised on and off for about 3 months between April and the summer while the really severe gastro problems were there. And with that, physical fatigue, and then the growing awareness that something was wrong in my brain. And we knew nothing. We knew nothing at that stage, so none of it could be easily recognised. But I had all the classic things of orthostatic intolerance. I just couldn't even sit up in bed. Of being aware that something was wrong with my thinking, but what was it? Massive hypersensitivity to sound and sights and so on. Complete sleep disruption. Total nightmare of real sort of whole neurological sensitivity. And then growing pains, intense pains in the big muscles of the legs. So it was all that package for me of the neuromuscular and the GI. And at a time when nobody had language for it or was even sure it was anything to do with the COVID. So it was very traumatic to go through that, actually. But I slowly clawed back. By about October, I guess, from that initial infection, was sort of, beginning to semi-function. but still with a lot of symptoms, and was able to get back home to my own self-care, and just about manage. Oh, I also had cardiac, all the usual irregular heartbeats and all that sort of craziness as well. It's quite a package, isn't it? So I was nowhere near recovered by that autumn, but well enough to sort of come home expectantly that it might just gradually improve. And so I started to do what you might think was sensible, which would be to exercise and to walk and to do things I'd done before in the way of just simple training things. There are some NHS strength and flex and walking apps with the Couch to 5K. So I tried some of those, but I felt like I was wearing a total body lead suit. And again, we had no knowledge then of what this was. So I thought that doing more might help me get over it. But it, as we all know, with this condition, it just ingrained it more deeply. So that was how the whole shebang got started for me 5 years ago. And it's been a very, very slow journey alongside the journey of many other people as we've been learning more in this community that what long COVID is and its similarities with other post-viral conditions. Other infections along the way. I've had at least one reinfection, probably two more. One in particular 2 years ago that really set everything back, almost back to where I was with the massive GI problems again. So far from straightforward, smooth recovery. But thankfully, particularly in the last couple of years, finding more and more things that have been able to take me consistently forward, and with a confidence that, the body's trying its best to heal, and I'm finding ways that are moving things on.
That's that's amazing to hear, and thank you for sharing that journey so succinctly. I think it's really powerful because obviously, and I know you'll come on to a bit more of that kind of recovery journey and what's helped you, but sometimes with these recovery stories, maybe there's some lacking from people that were ill in that first wave. You
Yeah.
were before lockdown, and maybe people think I can't get better. I've been ill. I've been a 2020
Yes.
person, and I'm still unwell.
Yeah.
And you're proving that it is possible. Yes, it takes time and it takes perseverance, and it's about then finding what helps move that needle and
Mm,
create that capacity to heal, and then doubling down on some of that stuff.
mm,
But yeah, like maybe that's a good segue then into a bit more detail of what you found has helped you in particular in the last couple of years. Anything that hasn't helped you, maybe before that, and then what has
mm.
helped you, I guess, move forward in a probably non-linear fashion still, but
Yes,
over
absolutely.
the
Yeah.
longer term, the sort of more upward trend.
And I think you're right about the 2020 cohort. I mean, we were hit harder because we had no immunity at all, and they didn't know what treatment to give. So if I was as ill as that now, I would have been hospitalised. I would have had steroids. I would have had, I would have had a lot more stuff to damp it down. But I wouldn't have been that ill because I would have been vaccinated, etc. So I think we were a uniquely damaged cohort. But I was fortunate in that there was no confirmed organ damage. So it is just all the functional mayhem, of which there's plenty, as we all know, but finding a way through that, yeah. So it was quite funny preparing for this interview, Rachel. I did my timeline and started to write down all the things I tried, and honestly, it nearly did my head in, because we were just, we were floundering around in the dark so much at the beginning, and a lot of people were coming into this, therapeutic space, call it what you will, with more or less well-intentioned or well-researched products and so on, understandably. And as a doctor, I carried my own sort of desire to be as careful about, not following nonsense or wasting my time and precious energy on things that weren't helping, but equally desperate, like everybody, to find something that would begin to get a purchase. From the early days, the one thing that stood out that at least relieved a bit of the misery was magnesium. Interestingly, just that first encounter with magnesium, and I realised, this really is the metabolic aspect of it, and it made my brain a little less utterly miserable in terms of feeling that horrible toxic fluid symptom all the time. So that was a simple supplement. Virtually none of the other supplements I've tried have touched even the sides of anything. But magnesium is a simple one, and it doesn't seem to do anybody any harm. So that certainly was worth doing. But all the various things I tried, too many to mention. Once I got in with the long COVID clinic, who were thorough in their assessment, but pretty limited in the support they could offer, to be honest. I never had major breathlessness issues, thankfully. But like many people, they picked up a breathing pattern issue. So I did all the breathing exercises. And that I could tell was gradually calming a little bit the nervous system. And it was just helping the whole body move a little bit easier as well. So that was worthwhile. And I know for some people that's been immensely important in the strand. But it was a useful strand for me. The other strand fairly early on that I picked up from one of the research studies at King's was the combination of antihistamines, fexofenadine and famotidine. And that again just seemed to ease some of the wild sense of whole body, whole nervous system inflammation. So I'm still on that combo.
Okay.
And I'm not going to come off that in a hurry, I think, until things are a lot calmer. And then it was really, so how to begin to get back into some sort of movement. I was very much housebound and, not entirely couch-bound, but able to do very little. I looked at two programs, the Nuffield Health one, which I know you explored, and it was one of the things that picked up when I first heard you speaking, Rachel. I picked up with that. It wasn't for me. It wasn't sensitive enough, and the cardio stuff in particular, it was way beyond what I was ready for, and it just made me feel bad about the whole thing and want to give up, and that's not good in this journey. So that was not for me. I tried the Susie Bolt Rest, Repair, Recover. Great all-round program with the meditations, the breathing, the yoga classes. Picked up one or two of the things from there with the the yoga type movements, but to be honest, the culture of it wasn't quite me. I felt a bit old and stuffy for a program like that. No criticism of it. I think it does a lot of things, but it just wasn't my tribe, actually. And in all of this, I think finding somewhere where you feel seen and understood in a coaching way has been important for me, and it may be for others, because we're so vulnerable, and we need people who can help us keep moving forward, but with a sense that they get who you are, and that works. So I think when things really, a couple of things I've tried that didn't work, just to throw in case people are interested. I tried Neurosim, the vagal nerve stimulating thing. Not really much purchase on that. I tried red light therapy. Not worth it really. And I tried hyperbaric oxygen, because we've got one of those about an hour away. It was a huge faff and exhausting. I thought, no, it's not really pay off enough for me. So, I've tried quite a few of the big shots out there without much success. But last year, 2024, yes, I started with Dan Neuffer's program, ANS Rewire. I was very skeptical about the brain training element, because I thought, this isn't all in your head. But I was impressed that Dan's approach was very multilateral, and he was aware of the mental elements, the multiple possible dietary and daily rhythm and movement. There were so many dimensions, and I thought, yeah, I don't fully go along with all his take on the science, but that doesn't matter. I appreciated his sense that you had to work on everything at the same time. And once you found that you were getting a bit more stability, to stick with it and not do what I think many of us have tried, which is what's the next silver bullet? I'll try that for a few weeks and then get fed up again. I'll try that and it doesn't work. And, I felt there was a consistency there, and I responded well to a program like that, whatever it was, 3 months or something, moved things slowly forward. And it was mainly that sense of the nervous overstimulation that began to feel a little bit more under control. But in his program, he was encouraging movement very much, but with no detail as to, so what do you do beyond the point where you can begin to walk around the block and, just get to the shops. And I was aware that I'd lost a huge amount of ground. I used to love long distance pilgrimage walking. That was my big physical thing that I would love to do. And so when I found your program, which I got through Jackie Baxter's Long COVID podcast, one of the many recovery story people, and I thought, yes. I heard what you said about having tried the Nuffield program and not being sort of sensitive and adapted enough. And I thought, no, I've got confidence. Rachel knows this journey and she knows the details of physical training. And I trusted that there was a safety in the way that you were moderating step by step by step. So I thought, yeah, this is one I want to try at this stage, with the confidence that I knew a program with a coaching element was good for me. So I started with you, I think, in April, wasn't it, this year?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah. And, by then, I was in a better place. My guts were a lot better since I'd come off gluten. That was another throw-in from Dan's program. Came off gluten. It was like night and day. And I'd been tested for gluten sensitivity. It hadn't showed up, but, it doesn't always. So getting the guts better and getting better nutrition and just feeling more comfortable, because it was very distressing. That was a big turnaround. But yes, then I started with you in April, and I was, I think you say, well, what level of function are you? And then go down a step, don't you? And I thought, well, I'm probably at your level 3. So I started at level 2 and I thought, gosh, this is hard. Because I was never a gym person anyway. And so sort of learning the different things and getting started. But I thought, I can do this. And that early stage in your baseline club, I think it was a couple of maybe 20-minute workouts a week, something like that. But it felt everything was getting a move, and I was finding what my body wanted to do, and thinking, I was getting the little adrenaline boost from it, and I felt very safe, because I felt that you'd titrated this to the right level, not to overstrain the body and the whole system. And because there was this sense of progression in it, you do your 2.1, you do your 2.2, and that's fine. And I could see each week that I was doing a little bit more. And I think I did your level 2 twice, maybe. I think that's right. And then I thought, I can do level 3. I could do level 3. Look at me, top class in the baseline club. And I felt so pleased. I was feeling the difference in my muscles, and just a little bit brighter and more capable all round. So it was onward and upward from there. I checked in, I think, quite carefully with you at that stage, to go up then to the Rebound proper, with the scary title of Rebound Athletic, thinking I'm not athletic at the best of times and knocking 70. But hey, I wanted to build, and I could sense that my body wanted to do more. It was that real feeling of, sweet spot. So I worked through, and I think we pinged back and forth on messages quite a bit, saying my body won't do this and my balance won't do that, and I sensed, you were giving me permission to just adjust things and tweak, but for the most part I did everything, not always beautifully. I was very glad not to be on a video as I was doing my sort of version of the exercises. But, I was moving everything, and I was gradually lifting more weights and, pushing. And, by the end, I was doing an hour workout 3 times a week and thinking, I'm loving this. And it's doing me a power of good. So, yeah, I got through the whole thing. And by the end of it, looking back, I've come a long way the last 6 months. I'm not recovered in the past tense. I'm still recovering. But my way of describing it now to myself, which is important, and to everybody else, is I'm basically a well person who's got issues, rather than
Haven't
somebody
we all?
who's, yeah, exactly. Haven't we all? And at my stage of life, we all have, but I'm no longer a sick person who has to manage absolutely everything around my sickness. I'm somebody who's still got energy limitations, but I can have a crack at most things now and recover well. And as long as I still pace to a degree, but way, way, way more capacity. Even in the last 6 months, I've probably got overall double the capacity for doing things, where, I think everybody's been there. You can do like one thing a day and that's you spent. 3, 4 things a day. And, I'm living and I'm loving life again, rather than having to dread what are you going to have to deal with next,
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to more improvement. Yeah.
Good. That's so good to hear. There's so many things I want to touch on there. I'm not going to have time,
No.
um, but I think well, first of all, I think you obviously came into the program probably at like the perfect time, and I do see this not perfect time, but a particular time where you can get the most progress from it. I think
Mhm.
so. I do it as for anyone listening that's interested. The baseline program is suitable for all stages of recovery, and there's various levels within that and people progress through that at completely different rates. It's about finding that baseline and staying there until you feel completely confident what they're tolerating. Then we make micro progressions. But I think what I've seen sort of a pattern of people coming that have done at a certain stage in their recovery where they have created this kind of healing capacity.
Yeah.
They're not
Yeah.
recovered, like you say. They're still symptomatic, but there's a certain level of kind of resilience starting to come back, often through this kind of holistic approach to healing.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's from that point that when movement can be like not just beneficial to get a sense of self back and feel like you're doing something, but also to kind of actually aid recovery, which often at earlier stages of recovery it is not helpful to actually aid recovery. If done in the right way, it can help keep your bones and joints healthy without causing flare ups. But if done in the right way, so yeah, that's just one observation. If anyone listening in thinking, "Oh, amazing, she's made all this progress in 6 months," and I think you absolutely have, and it's been amazing. But I think you definitely came in at like a really good time for
Yeah.
you. And you've mentioned about how I scaled you back, like create that safety net, and like we
Yes.
all of us, particularly those that are people that are active before being ill, overestimate our current capacity. Like we always want to do more, and that's kind of the job of the program myself as well, to kind of like rein you back further than you think. But yeah, like it's I also really appreciate you sharing things that have helped you. And I think it's really interesting. I've done a few of these interviews now over the past year, and different things help different people at
Yes.
different times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, whilst you mentioned oxygen therapy not helping you, some people it has helped, including myself at the right time. It
Uh-huh.
wasn't
Yeah.
easy, but
Yeah.
there was
Yeah.
definitely a cognitive benefit when I did it. So yeah, for anyone watching, I think, and the things that you mentioned that did help, like magnesium, obviously they're harmless. So if you
Yes.
haven't tried these things before, the antihistamines, they're harmless. So it might be worth thinking about. But just being mindful that if something didn't work, it might work again in a years. It might work better in a year's time as well. I had that with cold water therapy actually.
Oh yes, yes, yes. I tried that for a while over the summer, and I think it was a part of the help actually. But yeah, by the time it got to September, I thought, no, I've had enough of this. It's getting too cold.
Fair enough. Okay, so I just before we move on, just for any kind of like closing thoughts and things, I just wanted to read out your last win you put. So
Ah,
every week we
yes.
celebrate wins on a Wednesday. We call it Wednesday wins. And you wrote one a few weeks ago when you were on the last week of the 90-day Rebound Method program, which you graduated to. And I just think it's really fantastic. So I'm going to, if you can, I probably won't read it all out. I might paraphrase some of it, but I've got it here in front of me. So you said, it's my privilege to start off Wednesday wins because amazingly I've reached the last week of the program. You said I've been ill since 2020 and following some real progress with the ANSY program needed more help to safely build strength and exercise tolerance, as you kind of just mentioned. And I was jumping into the highlights you mentioned, having been in the program, which I just think it's really makes it really tangible. You said, here are a few highlights I hope will encourage others who are at different stages in the program. The I've never said dysautonomia and orthostatic tolerance is completely resolved. The muscle pain and the burning in my legs that you mentioned earlier has massively reduced. Your strength, balance, overall body confidence has hugely grown. In daily life, my general capacity for physical, social, and cognitive activity has increased around double from where I was 6 months ago. That's incredible. I can imagine, I can manage and enjoy much more driving, socializing, writing, including several conferences and holidays. And all this after celebrating your 70th birthday,
Yeah.
which is one of the reasons I really wanted to do. Before we hit record on this, I mentioned to you that I'd taken a break from doing these interviews for a bit, just time and other things going on. But I really wanted to interview you because it's rare that you see recovery stories from people of a certain age bracket, and I can only imagine having got ill in my late 30s and thinking my life was over, because I didn't see any way out, how that must feel if you're perhaps in the later stages of life. And I just thought it's such a source of inspiration, your story, that you can still get better. There's still a lot of life to live and enjoy. So yeah, thank you again for doing this.
No, it's a joy because I can't remember if I said earlier that, listening to recovery stories has been really important for me, especially when you have these ups and downs and you think, oh, no, it's getting worse. Every time I think I'm getting better, back down again like snakes and ladders. And at that point, I make sure I listen to some recovery stories because there's always something to glean from that. And I realised I was hungry to hear recovery stories from older people. Because for all that I knew how desperate it is for younger people to be ill, I was retired by the time I was hit, but people who've still got their whole life and family and everything, it's a terrible illness. But equally, I was afraid that, well, maybe at my age, my body just hasn't got it in it, like these young things who are recovering. And I don't know what final recovery, if there is such a thing, I'll reach. But my goodness, the pace of recovery now I know it's unstoppable. That's how I feel. I know I will keep recovering at this stage. And I've not felt like that at any stage until now. It's terrific.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And before we wrap it up, I wanted to ask a question about what the last 5 years has taught you, perhaps about yourself, about life, any lessons that you want to share with anyone listening.
Yeah, so much, isn't it? It's a major journey, I think, for any of us, and big respect to everybody who is battling this and still holding on to the hope to keep finding their own way through. You've got to find your own way. Do the work, do the inner work, was one of Dan's phrases. We've all got, our inner stresses that add to the mix and play on the fears that are all part of this. I think, keep the faith, keep doing that stuff. But I think the big thing for me has been to find the tribe that helps, not worry about the people who can't understand this, because if you've not had it, you just cannot. But to find the people who can help you on the journey. And for me, that's been recovery programs have been a big part of that, to be honest. But to take the journey, I think one of the things I learned when I used to do long distance sections on the pilgrimage to the Camino, the Compostela route, loved it. And one of the things that we always learned there was, don't look at how far you've got to go, look back and see how far you've come. And that's my biggest wisdom, I think, to anybody on this journey. It can be a long one and a grueling, really grueling journey, but every now and then look back and see how far you've come and keep looking forward then. Yeah.
That's perfect. I think that's a perfect way to end. And yeah, just to echo that, it's very hard to see things change day to day, week to
Yeah.
week even. So taking those moments to pause and reflect is so important, I think, because you're totally right on that. So thank you again for sharing your story. I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure to help you and a joy to have you in our rebounder community. I hope we stay in touch. And if you're ever this way in Hertfordshire, please let me know. So yeah, again, thank you once again, and thank you for sharing this and proving to yourself and to others that it's never too late to get well and start living again.